Welcome Binta and Toure and Ndoye to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. He made a mistake. I'm not a Malian, I'm a Pan-African. So I'm very honored and proud and happy to be here with you and to stand in front of you today. Not because I'm running for a presidential election, maybe a few years from now, but because as a CEO of a Pan-African banking group, which is well established in Africa, and also because of the fact that I'm a female leader in Africa, and because also the financial institutions have huge, very huge challenges, I'm sharing today my experience with you, why partnership and how partnership can impact your life and can impact people's life. So, I will maybe share with you my experience, but let me ask maybe you a question. How many of you have already taken the decision to go back to Africa after graduation? So can you raise your hands again so that I can see? Can you please raise your hands again? Well, a few of you, yes. But I hope by the end, maybe, of my address, that there will be more people raising their hands and that I'll be convincing enough to show you how it matters for you, distinguished and very good students, African students, how it is important to share your knowledge in Africa. I'll start with sharing my experience, I said earlier. My journey starts when many, many years ago, I was born in Mali from an engineer father, mother journalist, who also themselves are from different countries. I think that was the beginning of the Pan-African soul in me. My experience starts also with the fact that both of my parents were diplomats, and I was part of the happy few people who had the chance to study overseas, to have a good education, and to be also encouraged by parents who are truly Pan-African. My journey starts there. So when I was lucky enough to go back after my high school, or to go to France to study, and then ultimately to the US to study and my MBA degree. So when I finished all this, a question passed on my mind. So I said, okay, lucky enough to have a very good education, and having the choice to stay in America or to go back to Africa. So there was no doubt for me that I wanted to go back to Africa. No doubt. Why? Because as an African, as a Pan-African, it was important for me to give back to Africa the chance I had. That was very important. It was important for me to change the mindset about women in Africa. That was important. It was important also for me, and this is where partnership comes in, to show that as an individual who had the chance to have a very good education in Europe and in the US, could also transfer the competencies, transfer the education inside Africa. That was key for me. So partnership means that being open to have a platform between Africa and Europe and the US, between technologies, between sectors, have an open mind so that all of these be put together and bring something bigger. So I decided to go back to Africa. And how did that happen? Well, I had a methodology. I said, okay, let me find some American companies who have affiliates in Africa. So I went through a directory, and there was a bunch of companies, American companies, operating overseas in Africa. So I picked up all of them. So for me, Africa was big enough to experience of my knowledge. So I received a phone call of someone who presented himself as the managing director of EcoBank Côte d'Ivoire. And I say, why is he calling me EcoBank? I don't know EcoBank. I wrote to Chase Manhattan Bank. I said, so he called me, he said, well, maybe you need to update your directory because Chase Manhattan has no operation no longer in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. We, EcoBank, we bought Chase Manhattan Bank. I said, oh, okay. Are you a well-established bank? He said, yes. Are you an expert in banking? He said, yes. Are you serious? He said, yes. So he answered yes to all my questions, and I said, I was still not convinced. Do you have ethical rules? Yes. So I said, okay, I might be interested. So what he did, he sent me some brochures about EcoBank, a Pan-African bank, and there also comes partnership. Because when I received these brochures, what was written seduced me. EcoBank was a partnership experience between several countries, many African countries. It was a partnership between African business entrepreneurs who had the will and the vision to create a Pan-African bank bigger enough to compete with other banking groups. Then, I don't know if you guys were born, back then in the 1990s, do you know how people in Africa were transferring money out? Any clue? Well, let me tell you. Excuse me? Western Union? No, not in the 1990s, not at least in Africa. But if you were, for example, in Dakar, in Senegal, and you want to transfer out money to, let's say, Guinea, Conakry, you had to transfer from Dakar to Europe and go back to Conakry. So those entrepreneurs, they said, what can we do? Yesterday, there was a speaker, with less to do more. So they started traveling around with their vision and seeing head of states in several countries, African countries, explain the project. And guess what? A few years later, through partnering countries, EcoBank was born. So this, for me, was key too. Maybe I should go ahead and say also, without no exaggeration, that the banking group that I'm leading today was able also to grow to its various partnerships. And I'll explain why. I'm a strong believer in welcoming investors. We have bought ORAGROUP back in 2009 by a major Pan-African private equity company, which is called ECP, Emerging Capital Partners. Some of you might be familiar with that name. And this was a starting point to change the whole destiny of ORABank. At that time, the bank was a small player in a few West African countries. After several takeovers, reforms, and tremendous growth, we now operate in 12 African countries and 4 monetary zones. And not to say the least, we have key positions in those countries. And to manage this, we acted actively in coordination with trusted partners from various backgrounds, public and also private. Some of you might be familiar with BOAD. For francophones, it's Banque Africaine, Banque Ouest Africaine de Développement, so which means Development Bank for West African countries. There are shareholders in our capital. Proparco, French, Bio, Belgium, and as I said, Emerging Capital Partners, the private equity fund, of course. So what we could manage with the new investment is nothing compared to the expertise that was brought to our group. Africa-focused development finance institutions are to these days among the best people to work with and to have access to key decision makers. They are among the most professional people you can work with in Africa. This is to say that public and private partnerships need to be perpetuated and enlarged in Africa. It embodies Africa at its best. Innovation, professional, and rigorous. Let me tell you that my experience as African, as women in a financial sector is positive. And I do hope that each one of you who has the vision for Africa, who think that he or she can create value for Africa through partnering, and I explained to you how partnering is possible in a personal way, in a private way, and also in a professional way with institutions. So all of you, each one of you who has this passion, creating value for Africa, I will invite you to join me, to join us in impacting more on people's life in Africa. Thank you. So I'll be pleased to answer any questions, 2 questions because of time constraints. Any question? So maybe I have a question. How many of you are going to join me in creating value for Africa? Oh, I see more hands. So I'll take questions if you have.
My question is, forward group, retail bank or commercial bank, or investment bank? And how do you operate?
Thank you. The ORAGROUP group is in 12 countries, as I mentioned earlier. We are a commercial bank. We serve several segments of clients. We serve private individuals. We serve small and medium, small-size enterprises. We serve also corporates. And we serve also the financial inclusive people, which means for us that we invest heavily in digital banking. As you know, digital banking is the future for Africa, and this is a major focus for us at EcoBank, at ORAGROUP. Sorry.
I have a question targeted at getting Africans back to Africa. I started in Kenya and I've been working in the US and in Europe, but I'm trying to identify what is that one or a group of skill sets that are built for the African professional to go back and help Africa, and not so much, because I think sometimes we build the professional that can work in the US and in Europe but doesn't understand the markets in Africa. So what's your take on that?
That's a very, very good question. And I don't think there is one way to answer this question. I think the most important thing, African giving back to Africa, you need to be passionate about Africa. What I did not mention maybe is the small, I would say difficulties. There are not difficulties. I would say challenges that you have each and every day. And you need to be resilient. You need to be resilient. You need to think that local culture matters, but that should not be a barrier. That means that you need to be able to educate also. You need to be strong enough to share with people, to explain with people, maybe you'll have double or triple effort to make in order for people to move one step, whereas in other culture or in other areas, they would just do one step. Thank you.
Binta, thank you so much for these truly inspiring words, both in terms of being an African leader as well as inspirational for us women. Here's just a small token of our appreciation. We'd love to grab a quick picture with you on stage.